I keep coming back to this slightly uncomfortable thought. What if the universe is brittle? Not fragile like glass, where you bump it and it cracks. Brittle like a game save file. One bite flips, and suddenly your character is inside a wall, gravity goes sideways, and the whole world becomes nonsense. Not because anything exploded, just because a tiny rule changed. And what's weird is we live our lives like the rules are morally obligated to stay put. Like the speed of light has a personality. Like gravity signed a lease. But why do we assume that? Because it's always been that way. Sure, but that's also what a character inside the game would say, right up until the patch drops. Here's a smaller version of that feeling. You know that moment when you're doing something normal, making coffee, folding laundry, staring at your sink like it offended you, and you suddenly realize your whole routine depends on a stack of invisible agreements you never signed. The water is liquid, the spoon does not melt, the mug does not spontaneously turn into a small cloud of dust. Your hands keep being hands. You do not think about how outrageous that is, because it keeps working. And then you do think about it for half a second, and it's like your brain tries to shove the thought back down the stairs before it scares the cat. So let's do the scary version for a minute. Not what if the sun went out scary. That's a normal fear. That fits inside the rules. I mean, what if the rules themselves could have been slightly different scary? Like imagine a world where chemistry is just a little worse at being chemistry. Where atoms are not as good at hanging on to each other. Where stars cannot get their act together. Where the universe is basically just a cold fog forever. And the truly annoying part is you do not need a dramatic change to get that world. You need a nudge. A microscopic nudge. A number somewhere being a hair larger or smaller. That's the part that makes my skin itch. Because if the universe is that sensitive, it changes the vibe of everything. It turns reality into a balancing act. Like we are not in a big sturdy room. We are on a narrow ridge, and the ridge is made of math. Which is a wild way for existence to be. I think the first time this really hit me, it was not through some huge cosmic image. It was through a boring fact. The same physical rules seem to work everywhere we look. Like, the universe is not a bunch of neighborhoods with different local customs. It is consistent. You look at a faraway galaxy and the light behaves with the same stubborn habits it has here. Same patterns, same fingerprints. That's comforting until it's not. Because consistency raises a different question. Why does the universe have rules that are so uniform and so specific? It is like walking into an unfamiliar building and noticing every door uses the exact same key. That can mean great design. Or it can mean why does everything depend on this one key? And then there are these numbers. Not the numbers we made up, not prices or dates. The numbers the universe seems to run on, like some settings menu nobody can open. Some are enormous, some are absurdly tiny, and they are not just trivia. They are load-bearing. Change one, and you do not get a slightly different universe. You get no atoms, or no stars, or no stable anything. Which is not what most people picture when they hear a different universe. They picture purple skies and floating islands. But a lot of different universes are probably just nothing interesting happening. Ever. A blank screen. Not even the courtesy of a black hole. And that leads to this sneaky thought. We treat the universe like it is generous. Like it is overflowing with possibilities. But what if it is the opposite? What if it is a very narrow machine that only works inside a tiny range, and outside that range it either jams or dissolves? Like trying to build a violin out of soap. Technically you could shape it, but it's not going to survive the first note. Now there's a common move people make here. They say, okay, fine, the universe seems oddly just right for complexity, so that must mean something, someone, some purpose. And I get why that move is tempting. Honestly, it is emotionally tidy. It makes the precision feel less eerie. Like of course it is tuned, somebody tuned it. But then that explanation immediately opens up this second mouth in the floor. Because if you explain a tuned universe by pointing to a tuner, now you have to deal with the tuner. Where did that come from? What rules does that live under? How deep does the stack go? And suddenly answer starts looking like relocation. So instead, my mind tries a different kind of explanation. Not purpose, not luck, more like selection, not in the biological sense, more like this. If reality can come in many versions, then of course we would find ourselves in a version that allows finders. Which sounds almost too obvious, like a cheat code, because it kind of is. It is basically saying the reason you are not seeing a universe where you cannot exist is because you would not be there to see it. It is the cosmic equivalent of saying the reason your parachute opened is because if it didn't, you would not be writing Yelp reviews about skydiving. And yeah, that's true, but it doesn't soothe the itch. It just explains why the itch is always attached to a living person. but there's still something else going on. Even if you accept that we only notice life-friendly universes because we are the kind of thing that can notice, you still can't shake the feeling that the window for life-friendly is weirdly narrow. Like, you are spinning a dial, trying to land on a station. Most of the dial is static, and there is this tiny sliver where the music comes in. That's one thing. What bothers me is the thought that the music station is not just rare, it is also internally structured. Like it is not just noise versus music. It is a whole orchestra where the instruments have to agree on a tuning system. Not just one dial, many dials, and they are linked. And then you stumble into something even stranger. Sometimes these constants do not just sit there separately. Ratios between huge things and tiny things start repeating. Scales echo each other. It starts to feel like the universe has themes, like someone reused the same motif at different sizes, which is either deep, beautiful physics, or a hint that the universe is built from a small set of ideas that keep showing up because they are part of one underlying pattern. And if that is true, then the dials might not be independent knobs at all. They might be shadows of a deeper thing, and we are just labeling shadows. So the universe looks tuned because we are staring at the projected outline, not the machine itself. That possibility matters, because it is the difference between a million dials set perfectly and one hidden mechanism that forces the dials into place. One of those feels like impossible luck. The other feels like inevitability we don't understand yet. But even if it is one mechanism, that does not fully relax my shoulders, because there is still this question. Why does that mechanism produce a world where complexity happens at all? Why not a universe that is perfectly consistent but dead? A universe where the underlying rules are elegant and strict and produce nothing more than featureless symmetry. That seems like a perfectly respectable outcome for physics, honestly. And yet, we got this messy place with chemistry and storms and nervous systems and people doing taxes. So something about the rules does not just allow structure, it encourages it. It makes clumping and bonding and self-organization viable. Like the universe is not merely permitting complexity, it is giving it traction. Which is where my brain starts doing this thing I probably should not let it do. It starts comparing the universe to systems we build. Not because I'm trying to force an answer, just because the analogy keeps presenting itself. In software, you don't get infinity. Not really. You get limits. You set caps so the world does not break. Maximum speed, minimum step size, boundaries. And when you're inside the software, those limits do not feel like caps. They feel like laws of nature. Because what else would they feel like? If you were a character in a simulation, you would not be like, ah yes, the frame rate. You would be like, time has a certain texture. You would experience constraints as reality. Now, I'm not saying the universe is literally a simulation. People hear that phrase and immediately imagine a teenager with a controller, or a server farm with alien branding. But I do think the simulation comparison is useful, even if it is wrong, because it highlights something we usually miss. Limits are not just annoyances, they are stabilizers. If there were no speed limit at all, a lot of intuitive cause and effect goes out the window. If there were no smallest meaningful scale, things can get infinitely detailed, and physics becomes this runaway fractal that never resolves. So limits can be what makes a world playable, coherent, computable, habitable. And then you look at our world, and you notice it has a lot of built-in nope, you can't do that moments. You can't have absolute zero. You cannot exceed certain speeds. You cannot cram unlimited stuff into a region without creating something that hides its own interior. It's like reality has guardrails. And guardrails can be interpreted as design, or as the only way any consistent universe can exist without tearing itself apart. But even then, I keep circling back to the same creepy hinge. If reality is this dependent on exact balances, then our everyday confidence is kind of hilarious. We act like tomorrow is guaranteed to be physics compatible. We schedule dentist appointments for next month, as if the electromagnetic interaction is definitely going to keep letting atoms be atoms by then. That's absurd. It is rational absurdity, but it is still absurd. So okay, let's poke the idea from a different angle. If you imagine a universe where one of these deep constants is slightly off, you do not just lose humans. You lose the entire ladder that leads to humans. No long-lived stars means no stable energy sources. No stable chemistry means no information-bearing molecules. No heavy elements means no rocky planets. And what is funny is, you can erase life without touching life at all. You do not need to sabotage DNA. You just make the early universe a little too eager, or a little too lazy, about binding things together. The universe does not hate life. It just doesn't have to care. Life is downstream. It's a side effect of the permission structure. Which leads to one more unsettling realization. We tend to think of life as the improbable thing, but maybe the more improbable thing is a universe that reliably generates complexity. A universe that makes long chains of cause and effect possible. A universe where information can stick around long enough to do anything interesting. Life is just one extremely dramatic way complexity expresses itself. So when we talk about fine-tuning for life, maybe we're being too parochial. Maybe the tuning is for stable structure, period. For a world where things can be things for a long time. That reframes it a bit. It takes the spotlight off us, which I always find slightly healthier, but it still leaves the mystery intact. Because why is stable structure even on the menu? At this point, I usually notice my thoughts trying to land somewhere. They want closure. They want either it is designed, or it is random, or there are many universes, or there is a deeper theory. And the annoying truth is every one of those feels both plausible and incomplete. Design explains the narrowness, but raises the tuner problem. Randomness explains nothing, but sometimes that is how existence behaves. Many universes explains why we are here, but not why the space of possibilities exists at all. A deeper theory might explain the constants, but it still does not tell you why that theory has any obligation to produce anything besides sterile elegance. So no matter where you land, there is still this leftover wonder. And I think the real takeaway for me is not a conclusion. It is a change in how I feel about normal. Normal is not the default. Normal is a very specific arrangement of rules that happen to hold, and we have built our entire emotional life on the assumption that they will keep holding, which is either a testament to how stable reality is, or to how little choice we have but to trust it. You cannot live like you are expecting the constants to drift. You would never finish your laundry. But there is something kind of beautiful about the brittleness too. If it is true that a tiny shift could erase stars, erase atoms, erase chemistry, then the fact that we are in a universe where things cohere at all is not just lucky, it is specific. It is like walking into a room where a million tiny parts are humming in sync. You do not have to decide whether it was intentional or accidental to feel the same awe. You just have to notice that it is happening. And maybe that is the best place to end for now. Not with, here is why the universe is this way, but with a quieter question that keeps sneaking back into my day when I am staring at a spoon or a glass of water. If the rules are so exact that a hair-width change would make everything impossible, what does it mean that we get to experience a world where the hair-width is right? And what else, right now, feels normal, only because it has never been otherwise?